Hey guys, how you doing? What I'm going to do today is I'm going to talk about assault drills. So I'll have a little bit of an introductory talk right now, and then I'm going to take it out to the sand table and actually demonstrate stuff with the little toy army men. And so if you don't quite get what I'm talking about in introduction, then I'm going to paint a picture in the sand table model with the army men. Okay, so what is it we're dealing with today? So we're talking about assault drills. What is the assault? Well, the assault is basically the final part of the attack. Okay? What we usually talk about is we're going to do an assault through of the enemy position. So obviously this is an offensive drill. We're going forwards onto the enemy position, and then we're assaulting through the enemy position. In British military terminology, it's actually slightly different. So what that would be broken down into would be, for example, for a section attack, a squad attack, it would be broken down into the approach to the flank, and then it would be the assault from your forming up position, the assault across the ground towards the enemy position, and then it would be the fight through of the enemy position itself. So British military terminology, it's that fight through part, and US military terminology, it's that assault through part of the enemy position. So if you watch the videos, then you'll see guys calling assault, assault, assault once they forward up to the enemy position, and then they're going to go through the enemy position. What's important to understand here is that firstly I'm talking about drills which have application to certain contexts, and also this drill is the simple drill, the assault through drill, that is applicable to what we would call enemy in the open. So that literally means just enemy who are kind of hiding behind bits of cover, etc. And so we can sweep through that position. When it gets a little bit more complex, when you've got foxholes, trenches, maybe even irrigation ditches, buildings, small buildings, larger buildings, then it goes through a complicated thing where you've got to have specific drills for that. You've got to get up, clear trenches, you've got to get up and have specific bunker drills, which I'll talk about in a later talk, and then you may even get onto CQB, actually having to go into and clear buildings. So I'll talk about that kind of thing in a later talk. I'll talk about bunker clearing drills. This, of course, does illustrate concepts that are laid down in the MVT Tactical Manual for Small Unit Tactics. So I'm basically bringing to life some of the stuff that's in there. Okay, so the context of this is that if you're going to assault onto an enemy position where there's a number of enemy who are firing at you, then you have to use fire and movement. It's a basic principle when we're in enemy contact. So you're going to use fire and movement. So if we look at that at the team level, let's just talk about team level right now, whether that's maybe even a 4 to 6 man team. It could be two Alpha and Bravo, 2 guys, or it could be Alpha, Bravo, 2 guys each, and then a team leader in the middle, or it could be three guys as a 6 man team. That kind of level is what we're talking here. So we're talking squad level. If you're gonna get up onto that position, then usually what we're talking about in training here is we're talking moving as Alpha and Bravo in buddy pair fire and movement. Now, you won't get there. This is something that really needs to be understood. You won't get there unless you can suppress the enemy position. So there's lots of things that factor into that. How many are there versus how many you've got. Are you running this properly as, for example, a squad attack where you've got suppressing forces on a flank who are suppressing as you advance by fire and movement? But if you can't deliver accurate fire to change the enemy's behavior, as in kill him, wound him, force him to take cover, then you won't get up there. We're talking professional infantry tactics right now, so this is not, hey, get online and charge and hope not to be killed by machine gun fire, okay? If we're talking professional use of infantry tactics, then what we need to do is we need to suppress the position as we steadily maneuver on it. So that's the first thing to realize. You won't get to that assault line to conduct that assault through the enemy position unless your fire and movement has been effective in getting you up there, which means that whatever you're going to do, you've got to suppress the enemy adequately to get up there in the first place. The assault through part starts just short of the enemy position. If we're looking straight at US doctrine, it actually starts at a grenade range distance. So let's just say 30 yards from the enemy position. When we're training civilians, we're using rifles. We don't tend to do that. We tend to get a little bit closer. We're not throwing grenades, that kind of thing. So we tend to be, 15 yards short of where the enemy position is before we'll launch the assault line through the enemy position. You fire and maneuver up, you get to the assault line, and then you assault through. And that's standard US Army doctrine. And when you assault through, you move as a line, preferably not stopping, and you move as a line, you sweep through the enemy position on line until you get to the far side of the enemy position, limit of advance, LOA, LOA, and then you stop at that point. That is the assault through. So it's online, guns up, looking for the guys you've been fighting, which is why you see in the videos the guys are calling body, 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 boom, 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 as they move through. Basically, they're finishing off the guys that they've been fighting as they move through the enemy position. Like all things when I talk about drills, that fight up as a team by fire movement, and then that assault through the enemy position is a drill and is best employed within a larger element such as a squad attack, or even within something like a platoon attack, etc. There are exceptions to that. Some exceptions are if you're operating in thick bush or jungle where it's hard to use flanking support fire because you've got no clearing and there's no ability to see each other. Sometimes what you do is you'll get your force online. So you might have the whole squad assaulting online forwards because you can't really use the flank. That's one way of doing it. The other way you can use these drills is if you decide that you're going to have an immediate action, an IA drill that is offensive. So rather than having a break contact IA drill, you might have an offensive IA drill, and that might be getting online and then fighting through the enemy position. So you'd fight through, by fire maneuver until you got close enough, and then you'd assault through. Or if the enemy was that close, you might just get online and assault through. So these are all options that you can do. Generally, you want to do this thing within the bigger picture of support by fire, but you can use it as either thick bush and jungle, or you can use it as an offensive IA drill. Right, so MVT, Max Velocity Tactical History, we didn't always used to teach this. What we used to teach was more, from my experience in the British military, where what we would do, and that's what I want to cover today with the army men, is we would actually bound all the way through the enemy position. So like I said before, where we had the British terminology is we would get to a launch point and we'd assault towards the enemy position by fire and movement, and then when we got to the enemy position, the forward edge of the enemy position, we would simply break that down further and continue to fight through the enemy position. What I discovered was that to teach this in a short course, it wasn't really working. So we kind of dumbed it down a little bit, probably the wrong expression, but we brought it down a little bit so that we would teach the fire movement, and then we would teach the simple assault through, the assault line through the enemy position to the limit of advance. And then what I tend to do is, depending who I'm training and what class I'm doing, when we get to a little bit more of advanced level, what we'll do is we might actually bring in the ability to actually then fight through the whole enemy position. I'm going to show you that on the sand table model. So we adopted the standard, US Army sort of tactic. It's better, in my opinion, to actually fight through by fire and movement the enemy position. Because if you think about it, if you've got depth or mutually supporting enemy, then when you get to the assault through line, if you sweep through that, you guys are all stood up all at once, and so there's a danger that you've got depth or mutually supporting enemy that they might then target you at that point, especially because your support fire's ended because you're on the position, so now you're just sweeping through. If it's an isolated enemy position, no problem, right? If you continue to move in short rushes, then you're kind of a little bit more, you're still using that cover and concealment as you move in short rushes. You're going down as you move. What you have to do is, because of the way that angles work, is that if you advance forward, you might be two teams, right? You might assault as two teams. If you advance forward as two teams, then when you get to the edge of the enemy position, you've got to break it down further. Because if you have, imagine, this whole line of guys moving and you're right next to the enemy position, those guys, because of the angle, can't suppress across. So those guys are just moving. So what you tend to do, and this is where the drill got hard, is you break it down. So if you're moving as two Alpha and Bravo buddy pairs, when you get to assault through, you'll then get these guys to go down to individual buddy pair fire movement. I'll have to explain that with the army men because I can't really do it right here, because people get all sorts of things wrong about that. So there's some things about angles we've got to talk about when we start to talk about that as we start to fight through the enemy position. And the reason we break it down is because of the angles. So to make sure that when a guy's going forward, he's got someone who's suppressing forwards. There's another drill that we teach as well. And this can be applied as and when you feel it necessary. And you'll see it in some of the videos that I put up, and that's move fire. Move fire is a name that I basically gave it myself. And what move fire is when you're doing that fire movement bit and you're going forwards, normally you're moving in short rushes. I'm up, he sees me, I'm down, 5 to 7 yards, whatever, ba-boom, down, ba-boom, down, short bounds. Well, when you do move fire, you do those same short bounds, but as you get up and move forwards, you've got guns up and you're still engaging. So you're walking forwards, so it's not a rush, it's a walk forwards, but you're engaging as you move. That has the effect of cutting down that safety angle issue. The problem is that depending how well you've got that enemy position suppressed, you're up for longer as you do your bound forwards. But remember what I said, you're not going to get up on that enemy position unless you've got it suppressed. And if you're all hammering it with fire as you go through, then you're putting more suppression on the enemy position. So that means that everybody's firing all of the time. You have to take that technique with a grain of salt, because if you have got potential depth or mutually supporting positions, it might not be workable. One thing you should always remember is that in all these drills, you may even have to do this at the crawl. You may not be able to go forwards bounding like we like to do, get up, he sees me, I'm down. You might literally have to crawl forwards because there's whatever grazing fire, whatever coming over, maybe other positions, that kind of stuff. You can't stand up in it. So you're crawling forwards. You might have your position suppressed, but there's other stuff that's flying over, and you're just going to have to crawl forwards onto the enemy position. Something to think about when we start to look at this real time. Move fire can be used as part of the initial bound forwards, because then of course once you get to the assault through, that is effectively move fire, because the whole line is actually up and moving together, guns up. And so rather than doing it as a bound, then everybody's up and then moving forwards together. Another way you could look at move fire is like I talked about in that bush jungle environment. If you decide to get close country, if you decide to do an IA drill and fight forwards, then what you can do is you can actually fight forwards by move fire, because you're just hammering the ground in front of you and you're putting a lot of fire down, so nobody's basically not firing. Apart from doing quick combat reloads, basically everyone's guns up all the time. And if you really want to assault through as an IA drill, move fire is something that you can get into. And of course, as you get better at it, it doesn't have to be a slow walk. It can be kind of a trot forwards, firing and then down, and then boom, 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 boom. And you just hammer it as you go forwards. So all of these things are drills that you can consider combining into tactics to decide, how you're going to run your SOPs. Probably talked long enough on the intro. Let's go out and see what we can do with the army men and move them around and try and bring this to life. Thanks very much. Alright guys, here we have it. So what I've got here is a representation of an enemy position with enemy in the open. So I just put some little logs down just to delineate the position. I got 3 enemy in there, and then I got this piece of ground over here, and I've got this ditch that I just created, and this is where my team of 4 guys are going to start from. So they're going to be Alpha, the left-hand pair, and Bravo, the right-hand pair. Don't worry too much about the rest of the sand table. I'm literally just looking at this gap, at this area between here and the enemy position. So in British terms, this would be, they've obviously done the approach already. This may be part of a squad attack. There may be fire coming into this from a 90-degree angle from either side, depending which way we came. Or this could be, like I've talked about, this could be some kind of IA drill. So the assault in British Army terminology would be from here to the forward edge of the enemy position, and then it would be the fight through from the forward edge of the enemy position to the limit of advance on the far side of the enemy position. In standard terminology here, what we would do is we would fire maneuver forwards, and then we would get to a position just short of the enemy position, and this is where we would launch our assault from. So the assault goes from this position just short of the enemy, and it goes to the limit of advance just on the other side of the enemy position. Remember, we're not going to get from here to here unless we've sufficiently suppressed the enemy in here. And for the purposes of this, I'm not worried about any potential depth or mutually supporting positions. I've just got these 4 guys going forwards against this enemy in the open. So what will happen is, once they're ready to launch their assault, we're going to start moving forwards by Alpha and Bravo. Okay, so Alpha's moving, Alpha's bounding forwards, covered by Bravo. Alpha's moving forwards and it's going to get down, and then we're going to have a sequence of fire maneuver from here up to this line up here. Okay, so now we've gone from here to here by fire and movement. A reminder that we would not have made it to here, or certainly not made it to here without casualties, if we hadn't conducted effective suppression of the enemy as we move from here to here. Whether that's integral suppression from these guys, or whether we've additionally got support fire coming in. This is now the assault through line. Now it's important that as they come forwards with fire and movement, that they maintain their lateral spacing. They do short bounds, as I tried to illustrate from here to here, bearing in mind they are army men. They do short bounds and they maintain their lateral spacing. It's also a problem about converging on an enemy position, especially at night when you've got muzzle flash. So what we don't want to do is converge on the enemy position. We want to come up basically as a line by fire and movement. And now what we'll do now is we're going to assault through using the standard assault through procedure, where we're going to move through as a line from here to here. We're going to be calling body, and as we move through, we're going to be finishing off any enemy in front of us, because we must remember that the enemy is always alive when we get there. And then we'll stop at the other side and we'll call limit of advance, LOA, 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 when we get to the other side. You can either call, what we do at class is normally assault, 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 to give a bit of a warning order. You can yell assault through, whatever you want to use to actually get everybody to understand that they've now got up to the point where we're going to assault through the enemy position. Assault, assault, assault. So we all get up, guns up, online, not looking through our sights. We're going to just break the weapon down so you can see what's in front of you, because you're basically looking for where the enemy are as you move forwards. We're going to maintain peripheral vision, stay online, and move through at a steady pace that we can all maintain through the enemy position. Body, 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 taking out any enemy that we come across as we move through. Far side of the enemy position, LOA, LOA, LOA. We'll go firm at this location, and then what you do next is beyond the scope of this talk, but you've cleared the enemy position. You might need to go back and do EPW and all the rest of the stuff, etc. Okay, so that's basically what we're going to do, where we bound forwards by fire movement to an assault line just short of the enemy position, and then we assault through on line towards the LOA. Okay, so let's bring it back to that assault line, basically on the forward edge of the enemy position. Let's talk about alternative methods where we would bound through the enemy position. Remember, we're still not talking bunkers or trenches here. We're just talking about enemy in the open. We've got a nicely spaced team, so we're going to get the full coverage of the enemy position as we go through. If we decide not to get up on line and not to do the assault through, the alternative drill is that we'd actually continue to bound through. We already bounded through so far. We bounded from here to here by Alpha and Bravo. Now it may be okay to do that, to continue doing that. You could continue doing that, especially if you adopted move fire. The danger is, if for example Bravo bounded forwards and ended up, say, here, and they were running forwards, maybe nobody is suppressing this guy who's hidden behind a log, and because these guys are over here, once these guys get over to here, as they're running forwards, you can see that these guys are concentrating to their front, and also there's a safety angle issue over here. So if these guys are running forwards, nobody's suppressing to their front, especially as we're coming on to the sort of most dangerous point where we're actually assaulting onto the enemy position right here. So the solution to this, and this starts at whatever level you're at, you may be coming forwards with 8 or 9 guys on line, moving as a team and a team. You'll start to break it down. Here, we'll break it down from buddy pair fire movement to individual fire movement within the buddy pairs. So you've got to give yourself a command for this. So what's going to basically happen is once you give the command, these guys are going to go forwards, fire maneuvering with each other, and these guys are going to go forwards, fire maneuvering with each other. And this is one of the hardest things to explain to students, because we're not choreographing the whole line. Basically, we're using our training to stay roughly on line with each other, but we're moving within the individual buddy pairs. People seem to think I've got to coordinate him with him, and him with him, and him with the next guy over here, and him with the next guy over there. It's too complicated. It's not going to work. You got to run it free. All you want to make sure, however, is that you are maintaining the roughly on line with each other. So let's say we decided to move left-hand guys first, then what it would look like is him and him would move. Nice short, sharp bounds. He's obviously fallen over, he's probably been shot already. Nice short, sharp bounds. These guys are moving together, and these guys are moving together. They may get out of sync, but as long as they maintain roughly on line, that's fine. And having reached the same LOA point, we're going to be calling LOA, LOA, and we're going to halt right here. So effectively what we did was we moved up by buddy pair fire movement from here to here, and then we continued to break it down into individual fire movement in buddy pairs from here to the LOA. So we basically did the assault, and the fight through of the whole position. These are all optional drills that you can do. Here's a quick top tip for you at the end. What happens is, if as you were assaulting, you take a casualty, assuming that doesn't mean that you haven't got the position suppressed, you're going to have to make sure the position is suppressed as best as possible. But let's say you have to continue the assault and you've taken a casualty out of a 4-man team. Let's take a look at that. So here we are moving up, Alpha and Bravo. Let's say we take a casualty, this guy, down, boom. So we've got 3 guys left. These 2 were Alpha and this one guy was Bravo. It might be tempting, and it's still an option, to think about moving Alpha covered by Bravo. But then you've only got 1 guy here covering the move of 2 guys here. If you rehearse it and you get it down as a drill and you practice it for different guys getting hit, he's doing self-aid over here. We can't go to his aid right now because we're in the middle of assaulting this enemy position. So what you can do is practice it so you break down by the numbers. So now we'll move individually. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. And so therefore we've got fire and movement going towards the enemy position, and we have always got 2 guys suppressing while 1 guy moves. When he moves, when he moves, when he moves. The last thing we want to do at this point is have not enough suppression when we've already taken a casualty here. We need to make sure that we've got this position suppressed, assuming we are able to continue on towards the enemy position. You take another casualty, boom, then you've definitely got problems. You've either got to go on between these 2 guys, or you've got to start thinking about withdrawing at that point. Okay guys, it's supposed to be fall, but it's still really, really hot in these woods. So, hopefully that made a little bit of sense. Again, if this is the kind of thing you want to see more of, you want to see more clarification on these kind of drills, let me know. Thanks very much for watching.